Welcome to the Not Just Another Webinar East Edition series. Today's non-webinar is about tools, resources, and best practices for creating effective and engaging meetings. Many of these things I learned and put into practice as a result of the transition to remote work, but most of these can and should also be implemented into your in-person meetings. I'm Jessica Dunham. I'm a Director of Events at East. When I was in college, I had the opportunity to plan several meetings, trainings, and events for my sorority, and it was that experience that made me realize I wanted to turn my passion for planning into a career. So I joined the East team 8 years ago after earning a master's in event and meeting management. East is a very collaborative environment, and we have a lot of meetings, so I'm always looking for ways to create a better attendee experience. I have a lot to learn, but I'm excited to share some of my favorite best practices today. And at the end of the webinar, I will share a link to a resource document. All right, I may refer to Zoom throughout this webinar and how I use some of its tools in my meetings. Zoom is my preferred video conferencing system, and it's what we use in our office. It's not required to become the hostess with the mostess, but many features I reference are free. So be sure to check out my previous episode in this series called 10 Tricks to Tackle Zoom for more information. And I'll include some where you can find that in the chat. All right, let me know, speaking of the chat, tell me what word comes to mind when you think about meetings. Is it okay to admit that I really love meetings, even the virtual ones? The transition to remote work has really opened my eyes to two things in particular. Virtual gatherings have their own set of unique challenges compared to in-person meetings, but bad meetings are bad meetings, regardless if they're in person or virtual. And good meetings don't just happen. They actually require intentional preparatory work. With that in mind, here are my favorite 5 overall strategies for planning effective and engaging meetings, both virtually and in person. These are the basis for everything that I'm going to share today. So be intentional. Meet only when it's necessary. For example, when a decision requires multiple perspectives, or if you need to work through a complex problem and it's just easier to get everyone in the same room. Not every decision requires a conversation or a meeting. And if your goal is to just share information, ask yourself, can that be done through an email or chat? Shorter is better. So when you're scheduling a meeting, plan it for the least amount of time that you need and stick to it. If you need more time, schedule a follow-up or create a plan to work through the rest of it offline through chat or email or a project management system. But also be realistic. Don't schedule a 30-minute meeting just for the sake of doing so, because running over that meeting time is frustrating and can seem disrespectful. Have a purpose and an agenda. What are you trying to accomplish? Be specific about it. And if you don't know the answer, then postpone that until you have a clearer understanding. Agendas are really great for communicating the goal and the objectives, and they can also be used for note-taking, which is great for record keeping and reflection. Don't measure productivity by meetings. A good meeting does nothing for you if you don't have time to actually accomplish anything. So don't fall into the traps of meeting just for the sake of meeting or confusing participation in meetings with productivity. That's not good business. It's just busyness. And then lastly, encourage engagement. If your attendees aren't actively participating, they're probably trying to juggle other tasks. We've all been there, right? If your meeting doesn't require attendee participation, then what was the point of the meeting? Could you have just sent it all through an email instead? Remember to tell your attendees that you value their opinions and that their engagement is encouraged and expected. Engagement can be as simple as calling on attendees to ask questions or share their thoughts. All right, so before the meeting begins, we know that meetings are a necessity and can be incredibly beneficial if they are managed correctly. And really all of that happens before the meeting even kicks off. I'm a firm believer in sending meeting reminders. including when it is, what you hope to achieve, login information, links to agenda and the other resources that attendees need, and any tasks that you want them to tackle before the meeting. For example, brainstorm 3 to 5 ideas or complete this form. Yes, sending a reminder adds one more thing to my plate as the meeting host, but it helps attendees be prepared to dive right into the meeting. Consider what roles you will take on and how you can engage other team members in your meetings. Some examples: the meeting host. This is probably you if you've called the meeting. You're not the boss of the meeting, but you're probably facilitating the conversation, helping move things forward, etc. Maybe you also have an administrator. This is your note taker, the person who helps monitor time and keeps track of action items and next steps. A chat moderator. Obviously, this is probably only needed for your virtual meetings, but this person can engage the audience via chat by reinforcing specific notes, providing resource links, and sharing pertinent comments in the chat with the whole group. At East, our internal meetings usually just have a meeting host and administrator, and that one person may play both roles, especially with a smaller meeting. I like having an administrator, especially for larger meetings, so that I can keep as much of my focus as possible on the nuts and bolts of the meeting. Chat moderators are great for meetings with external participants, in training sessions, and in larger meetings, again, just to reinforce the messages. And then don't forget that attendees also play a significant role in the meeting experience. They're responsible for ensuring meeting effectiveness by being respectful, active participants. I think it's okay to establish some specific attendee expectations for your meetings. Just be sure to share those in advance with your attendees, and you might want to go over them at the beginning of the meeting as well, just as a reminder. One reason why we sometimes struggle with virtual meetings is because we miss that human interaction that takes place in in-person meetings. We lose out on that opportunity to connect it on a personal level by engaging in casual chit-chat as everyone arrives and enters the room for those in-person meetings. So consider allocating a few minutes of social time, 5 is fine, in your agenda to replicate that social interaction. Or try opening your virtual meeting rooms 5 to 10 minutes early. Just be sure to let your attendees know that you're opening the room early and that it is an opportunity to socially visit before the meeting officially kicks off. We all know how important first impressions are, and it's no different with meeting attendees. So here are a few ways to get your meeting started off on the right foot. I could argue that the welcome is the most vital thing to the attendee experience because it's the first experience your attendees will have at your meeting. For smaller meetings, I think it's a great opportunity to personally welcome attendees. Say their name out loud. For example, "Hey John," "Welcome Carrie," or toss it into the chat. People like to see and hear their name. It gives them an opportunity to connect, and it encourages them to speak right away. Plus, it makes them feel that their attendance is appreciated. For larger meetings, it's harder to personalize the welcome experience, but you can still make it less awkward and more friendly just by having music playing in the background or having a welcome slide on the screen. Kick off your meeting with a check-in, which is essentially a prompt or a question for everyone to answer. When it's done well, a check-in helps people connect and get comfortable. It allows all voices to be heard. It provides a really good read of the room or the audience. And most importantly, it engages your attendees right off the bat. Just remember to keep it short, well-moderated, and varied. Also consider how and when you might use a check-in, as well as what you hope to get out of their responses. Maybe consider doing an icebreaker for attendees that are unfamiliar with one another. Maybe your check-in is more of a team building exercise for coworkers or a group of people who know each other. Maybe it's just for fun and really just an opportunity to get people talking, whether it's out loud or in the chat. Or maybe you want to connect your check-in question or prompt to a deeper reason, such as helping to drive the meeting discussion. Knowing why and how you want to use that check-in can really determine or help you determine what to ask and how. So let's do a quick check-in just to show you how it works. In the chat, tell me one word that describes how you feel right now. These one-word check-ins are great for large meetings when you don't have time to go around the room and have everyone verbalize their responses. A good common practice for us is we will highlight common responses. So we'll say something like, oh, hey, several of you said that you're excited. Is that because we have a long weekend coming up? It's also an opportunity to ask follow-up questions. Lainey, why do you feel so overwhelmed? What can we do to take something off your plate? Let's try another one, just for fun. What color best represents your mood today? Let me know in the chat. Again, highlight the common responses. So maybe something like, several people said green. Is that because today is payday? And don't forget to ask for follow-ups. Erin, I noticed that you said you're feeling gray today. Are you struggling with something? What can we do to help? Sometimes we even ask attendees to put their answers in chat, but wait to hit enter until everyone is ready. Having everyone hit enter at once creates that flood of responses that can really help move things along, and it doesn't give anyone an opportunity to overthink their response too much. If you're looking for check-in questions to elicit a little more substance or conversation, not just a one-word response, maybe try some questions like these. What is one of your goals for this week? My win for today is blank. The most important aspect of our business is blank. And then don't be afraid to have fun with some of these questions too. My plans for the upcoming holiday are, what show or podcast are you binging? And blank inspires me. If you're stuck trying to come up with some new prompts, try the Dare Say check-in generator for some inspiration. Let me show you how that works. This is the Dare Say check-in generator. We use it at East just to help us come up with some new ideas for prompt questions. So you just click and it pops a question up for you. Click again, you get a new question. You can even filter it. Maybe you want more reflective questions. Here's some examples. Or maybe you're looking for some creative ones. Are you spring, summer, fall, or winter? Please share why. There's even some practical questions in here. So it's all based around what you're looking for and what you're hoping to get out of the experience. I'll include the link to the generator in our chat. Here are some additional practical tips for conducting a good check-in. Have a clear single prompt, so just make it one question. Give people 30 seconds to consider their response and write it out. This allows introverts time to prepare, and it prevents extroverts from oversharing or rambling. It also helps people listen to the responses instead of obsessing over their own answer. Set a time limit and enforce it. Otherwise, this quick activity can drag on and consume valuable meeting time. Make it optional and announce that up front, that folks have the right to pass. Encourage multiple perspectives. It's okay if everyone isn't feeling like sunshine and rainbows. All responses don't have to be positive. Encourage your attendees to be authentic and honest. And promote listening. Remind attendees again that their job is to listen more than they talk. At the beginning of your meeting, you also want to review the agenda. So this is an opportunity to revisit the overall goal and the purpose of the meeting, which will hopefully help keep your attendees on track. East has adopted a really clean, simple meeting agenda. Let me show you what that looks like. All right, so this is the meeting agenda template that East uses. It's pretty simple. We have the meeting title and the date. I also try to put the meeting title and the date up here in the document name just for consistency's sake. We have the goal. So again, why are you meeting today? What are you hoping to accomplish? Your big picture agenda items, who was attending, in attendance and who wasn't able to be there, some of the bigger decisions that we made, and then action items. We always make sure to assign them to a specific person or a couple of people, and then we always put a deadline on it just to create a sense of ownership and urgency. And then the second page, and pages 2, 3, 4, 5, however many you need, these are the nuts and bolts of what was discussed, what decisions you made, how you came to make those decisions, maybe some considerations for next steps, random thoughts, really whatever you need to remember from the meeting, you can put it here. So what I like about this setup is the first page of your meeting really provides a nice clean summary of what big picture things took place. So for someone who wasn't able to attend the meeting, in theory, they should be able to look at this very first page and have a really good understanding of what happened. And if they want more information, they can check out the rest of the pages just to kind of find the rest of it. But this page is also really good for if you need a quick reminder or you need to reflect on what was discussed. Again, this first page just provides a nice, clean summary. Right? Let's get back over here to our slides. It is absolutely vital for a meeting host to engage your meeting attendees. Audience interaction can look different for every meeting. Some of the simplest ways to engage your participants are through polls, utilizing nonverbal feedback communication, so simple thumbs up, thumbs down, head nods, in order to seek clarification. And don't forget that Zoom has reactions and nonverbal feedback tools built right into its platform, and they're free. You can, as a meeting host, you can comment on those nonverbal cues. So say things like, I see John shaking his head in agreement, or it looks like I got a smile out of Matt, and it helps everyone feel seen and heard. Make sure that you include visuals in your meetings if possible. Real-time visuals, so things like slides, graphics, utilizing digital whiteboards, etc., command an attendee's attention, so that engages them as well. Be sure to ask for responses too. So when you're doing that, recognize people by name and validate some of their comments, whether they're coming through chat or out loud. I would also encourage attendees, to utilize that chat box for questions and comments when others are speaking, so you can avoid some of those interruptions. But they're also great to use in larger meetings when it's just not feasible for everyone to respond to your questions. Brainstorming opportunities are a perfect way to encourage participation in a meeting. An example of what this could look like is at the beginning of a meeting, you share a document that has some key questions or prompts, and you encourage your participants to contribute on that document, whether they're generating ideas, responding and commenting to others' ideas, etc. Doing that for about 10 to 20 minutes. And then you have a couple of follow-up options. If meeting time allows, you can go ahead and have that verbal debrief with your attendees, or you can schedule or send an email with some general conclusions and next steps. And then you can always send out a quick survey once everything has been shared with the attendees and let them vote on their final options if a decision is needing to be made. Breakout rooms, especially virtual ones, are another excellent tool to engage all of your attendees. Some opportunities for when you might want to use a breakout room. So those are great for large group meetings. It creates a more intimate experience that might engage your quieter, more introverted people who feel more inclined to speak up when it's a small group versus 20 or 30. Also, when meetings are large, attendees really miss the opportunity to contribute. Some of them may feel uncomfortable dominating the discussion, or they fear talking over people. So it really ensures that all of your voices can be heard, and it makes everyone feel a little more accountable when there's fewer people in the room. Breakout rooms are also great to utilize for working meetings and when you might want to accomplish some sort of task within that meeting time frame. So maybe you have a big project and you want each group that's in a breakout room to tackle a different part of that project. It's kind of think of it as like a time saver, that divide and conquer approach. So an example of what this could look like is maybe you bring everybody into your meeting, you review the objectives and the goals, then you assign your breakout rooms, provide a time limit, and then you charge each group with a different or a similar task if that's what you need. Then you bring them all back together as a whole, and then you got a couple of follow options on there. You can either have the groups report verbally to one another and welcome comments and clarification from the other groups, or you can have all of the groups email their notes to the meeting leader, and that meeting leader puts together a list of all of the responses and work done, and then can share those with the attendees, and they can vote on final decisions if that's what's needed. And don't forget, those breakout sessions are also free on Zoom. So I would also encourage, if time allows, to include some fun things into your meetings. And some of these will take 5 minutes, some may need a little bit longer, but maybe you've got a particularly long training schedule. Maybe you can build in a 15 to 20 minute brain break. Or maybe it's a regularly scheduled staff meeting where the purpose is for you to all connect and to update one another and just to kind of see each other and be together. Those are also great opportunities to build in some fun team building type activities. So these are just a few of the examples of things that I've seen and some of these I've participated in. I'll share more on the resource document at the end of the webinar. But these are really fun. I mean, you can do really cool, unique things like a home office tour, or introduce your work team to your family, since a lot of us are still working from home. Contests and prizes are also really fun, and bring out the competitive spirit amongst your team. There are lots of online games that are available now, but there are also some games like Two Truths and a Lie that don't require any sort of technology to play. Maybe you want to just get everybody up and get them moving, so you do some sort of a scavenger hunt. So for example, the first person who can find a hairbrush and bring it back here gets a point. Things like that, just to get people up and out of their seats. Similarly, maybe do a mini dance party, turn on your favorite song, everybody dance to it, just kind of shake it out for a few minutes. Similarly, maybe a 5-minute stretch. These are great for those of us who sit in an office setting for long periods of time. Mindfulness meditation is always great to clear your head when you're working on some really tough projects. Even things as simple as like a challenge to find your favorite custom virtual background, and then the coolest background gets a prize, or I don't know, you can be really creative with what kind of prizes you want to give, or it just can be fun, a fun way to show off all the different personalities in your office. So a couple of things that East has done or incorporated in some of our meetings lately we've started doing some 30-minute yoga sessions. These aren't necessarily incorporated with our meetings, but they have become a regular practice for us. And they're just great ways. It's just a great way to clear your mind and get your body moving a little bit. We had a virtual farm visit. We had some really cute goats join our staff meeting one day. I'll put a link to the St. Joseph Centers of Arkansas if that's something that you're interested in. They have other animals too. That was really fun to do. And then we recently did a virtual painting session, and April, our communications coordinator, played some tunes for us. That was really a really fun, creative outlet for us. Again, that wasn't part of a meeting, but because it took a little bit longer than a meeting time would allow, but it's just another example of a really fun, engaging way to connect with your coworkers or people that, maybe you're in association with. Just a great way to connect and engage. Toasty is a video conferencing platform with some built-in activities. It's something we've happened onto recently and really love, and I'll actually be sharing some more information about Toasty in a few weeks in a Techsploration Tuesday post, so keep an eye out for that. But I'll throw a link to Toasty on that document. It's a super fun, engaging platform, and if for any facilitators who are watching and are planning to come to seminar, you can probably expect to see some Toasty sessions throughout the seminar experience. And then bingo, we recently did some bingo with our staff. This can be super quick, 5-10 minutes. Play one round of bingo, then everybody gets back to work. Prizes are always great, but not required. But again, it just kind of gives yourself a break from the monotony of the day. And while these are all really fun things, they can also be used to enhance engagement and support clear-headed thinking, which ultimately results in more effective teamwork and better decision-making. So I encourage you, or I challenge you, to be really creative and look for some unique opportunities to add some fun components to your virtual meetings. So I'll share a couple of pictures with you. One of these is from our meeting where we had our goats join us. It was just kind of fun to feel like we were out on the farm with them for a little bit. And then the other picture is from our painting party that we did recently. That was also a lot of fun and a really great team building activity for us. All right, so yes, your focus should be on making sure that the meeting content, the nuts and bolts of it, are being met. You want to make sure that you're achieving your goal and the purpose for having this meeting. But I also encourage you to think about how to manage the end of the meeting, because those can sometimes get really awkward. So the end of the meeting, whether they're virtual or in person, you need to have some sort of a wrap-up plan, and kind of be able to signal to your attendees, okay, we're starting to wrap things up. Here are some next steps. So some of the ways that I recommend wrapping up a meeting are to just simply say, okay, we're coming to an end. Let's summarize what we've talked about, what our decisions are, what are our action items and next steps, and then we'll be on our way. Maybe even this is an opportunity to schedule your next meeting if you feel like you didn't get everything accomplished. Give yourself a few minutes to find the next available meeting slot for everybody. If time allows, and if there's anyone, if time allows, and I will pose the question, or I'll pose the statement that if anyone wants to talk further about what we discussed in the meeting or has any follow-up questions or concerns, I usually try to stay on the Zoom meeting, or I tell them that I'll be available on the chat immediately following the meeting in case they want to just have any of those follow-up conversations. All right, so these are a couple of best practices specifically for virtual meetings, and I just think it's important to share because you're not always thinking about these things when you're focused on the content, but they can add or they can enhance the virtual meeting experience. So this first set of tips, if you will, is all about elevating your presence within a virtual meeting. These are good for hosts and attendees to know. So direct eye contact is vital to reinforcing your point. So definitely make sure that when you are in a meeting, look at your camera. Try not to look at the people that are on your screen. That will give the illusion that there is direct eye contact happening. And speaking of your camera, I definitely encourage you as a meeting host or as a meeting attendee to turn on your camera during meetings. Video humanizes the message, and it provides an easy way for us to signal when we have something we want to add in. You can usually tell if someone's getting ready to talk or wants to share. And so being able to see those kind of visual cues means that there will hopefully be less crosstalk and more clarity. Use a louder than usual voice when you're in virtual meetings, just to make sure that people can hear you. It also conveys authority, credibility, and confidence. Make sure you frame yourself wisely so that your head and the top of your shoulders should dominate your video screen. Also be mindful of the background. So what's behind you? Is it terribly distracting? And if so, maybe use a virtual background. Be present and mindful. So this one's hard for me sometimes. I like to multitask or attempt to multitask, but when I'm in a meeting, I try to minimize my other tabs and windows. I'll turn my phone upside down. And I try to be mindful that I'm always on camera so everybody can see what I'm doing. And then kind of similarly, don't become your own distraction. So keep yourself on mute and only unmute when you're speaking. Even consider using headphones to eliminate unwanted background noise. And if you do happen to be doing something that requires you to move, or maybe you have to take care of a child or something, it's okay to turn your camera off for a few minutes and deal with that and then come right back on, as opposed to creating a distracting scene for others. Use the window or the chat window as a partner for your meetings. I mentioned this a couple of times. This is a great place for you to link to the meeting agenda and resources. It's a great opportunity for attendees and the meeting host to throw in random comments, thoughts, questions, ideas, especially when others are speaking. That way you're not having to worry about interrupting somebody. So those are just some great, I think, takeaways for hosts and attendees. Also, I would really encourage you to be a great listener. Again, whether you're a host or an attendee, being an attentive, active listener in virtual meetings helps you to get a read of the room, but it also creates an environment where your coworkers or colleagues feel heard and understood and valued, and they feel like they want to contribute more to the conversation. So listen for what's being said and what isn't being said. Pay special attention to what you're hearing if what you're hearing doesn't necessarily match the tone of voice or the body language of someone. That can indicate that there may be something different going on. Don't relate everything you hear back to yourself. So everyone likes to be heard and valued and appreciated for their own unique experiences. And while sharing a common challenge with a colleague can create a sense of connection, it can also easily make the conversation seem like it's all about you. So when a teammate says something like, "I had the hardest time getting my kids to bed last night," rather than saying, "Me too," try saying, "Man, that sounds exhausting. How did you finally get them to sleep?" Paraphrase what you're hearing and check for understanding. This doesn't necessarily slow down a meeting. In fact, it will help everyone recollect the content with more clarity and avoid long recaps later. Paraphrasing also helps people feel like they're heard and understood, and it increases the likelihood that we're all going to be on the same page moving forward. Get comfortable with silence. This one's hard for me, but unstructured silence is different from planned silence. So unstructured silence can indicate a lack of structure or direction and make us feel compelled to fill that void with humor or irrelevant comments, which can take you off track from what you're trying to accomplish. But good listeners often provide silence for people to connect with their own thoughts and feelings. It provides some opportunity for self-reflection and the opportunity to process information at everyone's own speed. So the simple difference is just saying, I'm going to ask each of us to think silently about this topic or question for the next couple of minutes before we each share our perspectives. I'll keep a timer on my end. Again, just telling your attendees that this is a planned, quiet time doesn't make anyone feel compelled to break up the void of conversation. And remember to be inclusive with who you listen to. It's very easy to get caught up with focusing on the comments and and conversation of people who are similar to you or who have similar views to you on a specific topic of discussion. So make sure that you're being mindful of your own similarity bias, which is when you listen more to people who have more in common with you than those who are different. It just makes for a better meeting experience for you and your attendees. All right. Throwing a lot of information at you. So please feel free to toss any questions you have my way. Throw those in the chat and I'll be sure to respond. While you're working on your questions, let me provide a quick bit of info about EAST for those who might not be familiar with us. So EAST is an educational nonprofit headquartered in Little Rock, Arkansas. We put industry-grade technology into schools and co-ops and challenge students and other lifelong learners to go out and solve problems they find in their community or create service projects and figure out how to solve them using technology. With nearly 270 programs spanning across Arkansas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Pennsylvania, we provide all learners with the opportunity to have relevant, individualized, and life-changing educational experiences. If you take away nothing else from today's webinar, please remember, good meetings don't just happen. They require thoughtful, intentional, preparatory work. And don't forget to check out my previous webinar episode, 10 Tricks to Tackle Zoom. It's available on the EAST Initiative Facebook page and our YouTube channel. And again, this webinar covered actually 12 tools and tricks that I use that are free on Zoom so that they can help you be the hostess with the mostess. Thanks again for tuning in. And before you leave, please take a few minutes to fill out the survey. I'll throw the link in the chat for you. And make plans to join us at our next non-webinar, which is going to be over the science of well-being with Amy Bell, our program coordinator of Education Unleashed. And if you have any questions about EAST or you want to discuss about possible partnerships, please feel free to connect with us. To learn more about what EAST students are doing in their community, be sure to follow us on social media at theeastinitiative.org or the EAST Initiative on social media, or visit our website at eastinitiative.org. Thank you very much.